Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we are looking at Caiaphas questioning Jesus. And if you've been with us the last couple of days, you've seen that he was arrested and he was taken to Annas first, or Ananias, depending on how that's interpreted. And then now he's taken to the other high priest before the council. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. And this comes from Matthew and Mark and Luke. I like Mark's version of this a little bit better, so I'm going to read from Mark 14, verses 53 through 65. They took Jesus to the high priest's home where the leading priests, the elders, and the teachers of religious law had gathered. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance and went right into the high priest's courtyard. There he sat with the guards, warming himself by the fire. Inside, the leading priest and entire high council was trying to find evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death, but they couldn't find any. Many false witnesses spoke against him, but they contradicted each other. Finally, some men stood up and gave their false testimony. We heard him say, I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I will build another made without human hands. But even then, they didn't get their story straight. And this is what happens when you're trying to, fake someone or get a sham of a trial. We see this in all the time. Then the high priest stood up before the others and asked Jesus, well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself? But Jesus was silent and made no reply. He just sat there. Then the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the son, the son of the Blessed One? Jesus said, I am. And you will see, I am. Again, that I am statement. And you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven. And this was just blasphemous to them, and they would have lost their minds, and they did. Then the high priest tore his clothes to show his horror and said, excuse me, why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict? Guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die. Then some of them began to spit at him, and they blindfolded him and beat him with their fists. Prophesy to us, they jeered, and the guards slapped him as they took him away. I just couldn't imagine being those guards. And so as we see this, right, because of their haste to complete the trial and see Jesus die before the Sabbath, less than 24 hours away, the religious leaders met in Caiaphas' home at night instead of waiting for daylight and meeting in the temple. That's what they would have usually done. But again, they were doing this under the cover of darkness. They were trying to kill him as quickly as they could. The High Council was the most powerful religious and political body of the Jewish people. And although the Romans, right, and at this time the Romans controlled Israel's government, they did give the people power to handle their religious disputes, their religious issues, and some civil disputes, some minor civil disputes. So the High Council made many of the local decisions affecting everyday life. But in order for a death sentence to be carried out, that had to be approved by the Romans first. So they had to get Rome's approval. We're going to see them go to do that. The High Council, they tried to find witnesses, right? They were trying to find witnesses who would distort some of Jesus' teachings. They tried. But finally, they found the two, right? Who distorted Jesus' words about the temple. You can see that in John 2:19, where he talked about, you can tear down this temple and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Now, he wasn't actually talking about the temple. He was talking about himself, and we're going to see this happen. But they claimed that Jesus had said he could destroy the temple, and that would have been a blasphemous boast. I mean, the temple to them was, they worshiped that almost. It was the most holy place. And so Jesus, right, then whenever they finally push him and they ask him if he's the Messiah, he says, I am. And so he declared his royalty in no uncertain terms. So he was clearly stating, yes, I am the Messiah. And calling himself the Son of Man, Jesus was claiming to be the Messiah, and his listeners knew that well. They knew exactly what he was saying when he said this, and so he also knew that this declaration was going to be his undoing. All right, if he wanted to get out of this, he could have just stood silent while these guys made up all these stuff, and then eventually they really wouldn't have had anything on him. But him actually declaring that he was the Messiah in front of all of them was enough for the death penalty. Yeah, that was extremely blasphemous, and that was, definitely worthy of the death penalty in that time. And so, but he didn't panic, right? He was calm and courageous, and he was determined to fulfill his mission, even though they were beating him, And again, I just wonder what it was like to be those people, who did that. You wonder how many of them were saved after the fact. Like, how many of those people who beat Jesus were saved after the fact? I hope some of them were. But I figure there's some who weren't too. Oh man, that's just, I couldn't imagine, punching Jesus or slapping Jesus in the face and mocking him as you do it. Oh man, that's just sends chills down my spine thinking of being the person who did that. And so, but as we see again, they're rushing through this, they're hurrying through this, they're trying to get through it as fast as they can. It's a sham of a trial, right? They've got less than 24 or right at 24 hours to make sure that he dies, and so because again they couldn't crucify someone on the Sabbath, so they were trying to do that and make sure that the crowds didn't come against them. And that's why they were doing it in the cover of darkness, and so that, you see, this is what they were doing. We're not unfamiliar with this. We see these kind of things all the time still in our government, in our courts, and our there's just corrupt people out there, and so there always will be. And there's Jesus had, like I've talked about before, if Jesus had to deal with it, then why would we think we would have to deal with it either? So again, we just remember, this is the scene. Like, this is all planned out. This is Jesus's mission. This is God's mission for this to happen. And he's using the evilness of the local people, or the evilness of the religious rulers at the time, to make sure it's carried out. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching, following along as long as you'll have. I really appreciate it. We are getting closer and closer to the end with this one. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do so. We're going to dive into some other studies as well. And as always, I appreciate everyone for watching.